go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Masters Fantasy Show, brought to you by MastersFantasyFootballLeagues.com. My name's Jonathan, the commissioner here at Masters Fantasy Leagues. Joining me today, the Doc, Dynasty Owl. What's up, guys? How you doing today?
Doing great. Another week.
Yeah, doing pretty good.
Yeah, another week, a very important week has arrived. One of my favorite weeks in fantasy football, next to championship week, and right there with starting week. Every year is the Thanksgiving week, man. We got a lot of games on Thursday. It's also the final week of trading here at Masters Fantasy Leagues. So a very important week, the stretch of the end of the season's here. It's time to, bolster your roster, make some moves, whatever you got to do. So I'm super excited to talk about this episode today. We're going to be doing Dynasty trade targets for the final week of trading. Guys, you want to get on your roster now, either for the run or either maybe the situation is going to change for these guys in the offseason. Value is going to go up. All right, one important thing I want to bring up before we get into today's episode, one of the perks of working at a fantasy football company is we got some leagues that we can give away here and there. First of all, I want to thank all the people that have subscribed to the channel. Thanks so much. Anybody that's watching that hasn't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for, man? Come be a part of the Masters family. A lot of fun, a lot of Dynasty football talk over here, so on and so forth. But what we're going to do, playoff leagues are coming up here in a couple weeks. Some of the funnest leagues you can hop into. Those run from wild card weekend all the way to the Super Bowl. Most points wins. Some of the most popular leagues we run here. So we're going to go ahead and give away a 10 playoff email league or live draft, up to you guys. And how we're going to do it, we're going to have a trivia question. That trivia question is going to come on one of the shows next week, just randomly. First person that answers it in the comments will receive a free 10 league. So just wanted to pass that on. And I think I'll have you guys come up with the trivia. Nothing easy.
Oh, boy. All right.
I'm already thinking of questions.
Yeah, we're not going to make it easy for you guys at home.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, no.
All right, good stuff. With that said, let's jump into the meat of today's episode. That's going to be Dynasty trade targets, final week of trading. Who's on your guys' radar? What are the moves you're making in your Dynasty teams? Kick it over to you, whichever you want to go first.
Al, you want to go? You want to take it?
Sure, I'll go first. Yeah. So
I'm gonna regret.
So yeah, we're talking Dynasty, but I mean we're talking, guys who can help you right now and for the future, in my opinion, at least. So I'm looking at a guy who I think he's relatively affordable right now, still pretty young. I think he can help you compete and win a championship this year. And on top of that, I think his value has the potential to skyrocket this offseason. And he's a receiver. Is it going to be Ryan's guy? Pittsburgh Steelers, Deontay Johnson. All right. So yeah, Deontay Johnson's my guy. I got some numbers to back it up. One of the things we talk about the most that matters the most to us for receivers is targets. Targets are king in PPR leagues because we know receptions follow targets, yards follow receptions, and touchdowns follow receptions and yards. But more importantly than targets is really, can you earn those targets? Are you separating on your routes? And I was just playing around with playerprofiler.com. They've got some advanced data if you subscribe to them. And I was sorting the list kind of by their advanced metric called like target or yards created per target, sorted by the highest on that. And then I was also looking for guys who would have over 80-ish targets. And so the top three names that came up, number one was Deontay Johnson for having over 80 targets and then had the most target separation. Second was Cooper Kupp. So that's pretty good company right there, in terms of, criteria to look at. Those two metrics matter. And then just looking at his box score, I mean, these are these targets per game real quick every week: 10 targets, 12 targets, 13 targets, 2 targets, 1 down week, then 13 again, 6, 13 again, 13 again. So I mean, this guy gets 13 targets quite frequently. We know Big Ben in that offense, pretty pass heavy right now. We also don't think Big Ben's that great of a quarterback. So what I'm talking about, where his value could skyrocket, I mean, Aaron Rodgers' name has floated out there, as coming into Pittsburgh, or maybe they just go out and they get a young guy. But either way, I think, he's going to produce down the stretch this year. And then on top of that, if they have a major quarterback upgrade, this guy could be, big time in 2022. So I think he's a good buy now and just guy for the future.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love that take. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I was sitting here thinking when you started, I was thinking about Big Ben. Obviously the big question mark at quarterback. But I think that in this case, this actually kind of plays to the advantage of Deontay Johnson. We're all looking at the uncertainty. But I'm looking at the upgrade. I don't think it's going to be that hard to upgrade from where they're at. Big Ben, obviously, a lot of us, look at Big Ben as an elite quarterback and one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. His best fantasy days are far behind him now. So I think you got to kind of separate that. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, value-wise, I think people are still afraid of the unknown at quarterback instead of looking at it as positive.
Yeah, and then one other quick thing too. I kind of left out where he ranks right now in terms of actual PPR scoring. He's averaging 17.3 points a game. I think he's 18th in terms of receivers and total points scored this year. He did miss one game with an injury, but that shows he's right in between kind of, is he a wide receiver 1 or a wide receiver 2? I think he's, right now he's playing more like a mid-level wide receiver 2, but I think real easily he could get in those top 12 numbers. So I think he's still, you can buy him. He's still affordable because he's not in that wide receiver 1 tier yet, but I think it's coming soon.
Gotcha. And I'll give you a second, Doc, if you want to follow up with that. Know me, I like to put the heat on you guys. So I got a question, man. I'm going to go right for you, Dynasty Owl. I know this is another wide receiver that you like quite a bit. Right now, Dynasty football, Deontay Johnson or DJ Moore? Who you taking?
Ooh, so that's a good question. I might still go DJ Moore. DJ Moore is just a guy who I just think he's built a little more for this league. The only thing that does worry about me about Deontay is he's a little thin, little skinny, but he gets the job done. I love DJ Moore as well. Also realized I forgot one other small little throw in to this point. I said the top 3 guys when I was sorting that criteria. Number 3, Jaylen Waddle. So maybe go buy some Jaylen Waddle too. Jaylen Waddle has 86 targets before this past week, and his target separation out of guys with over 80 targets was 3rd best behind Deontay Johnson, Cooper Kupp, and then himself. So yeah,
that's interesting because I actually thought about bringing a topic up between Waddle and Chase this week. And I think clearly you'd rather have Jamar Chase. I see the stat over the weekend, though, that, Waddle leads all rookies on targets and receptions. And I do think Chase can keep some of those big plays up, et cetera. I just think it's a little closer than people think between those 2 wide receivers in Dynasty football.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Gotcha. It definitely helps Waddle right now, though. He's basically had no other receivers competing for targets. They've been so banged up. But I do agree with you. It does make you think because he's done a lot of good stuff with his targets anyways. And 2 is a guy that we thought would feed him quite a bit before the season. So, it's kind of working out the way we expected. So
right. And I'll just add to that because I didn't know if Waddle could do it as a 1. Like rookie season, come in, spotlight on him as the number 1 wide receiver. And he's done well in that spot. So
yeah, he's exceeded my expectations.
The same here. All right, and I'm going to jump into mine now. I'll kick it over to you next, Doc. And this is it's kind of a 3-part scenario. And I actually think I'm probably one of the first people to ever recommend going to trade for 3 running backs on the same team. But that's exactly what I'm going to do here. Yeah, and well, you can only trade for 2 of them. One of them you're going to have to pick up on the waiver wire. And my thought process here is that you're going to bolster yourself down the stretch, but I also think it puts you in a good situation. Pick up these 3 running backs for this season. Next season, you'll have 2 starting running backs in the NFL and be in good shape for the rest of this season. And I'm just going to toss it out there. These 3 guys are Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones, and Keyshawn Vaughn. And my whole thinking behind that is I'm looking at the top 15 list of running backs for this season. I think Leonard Fournette sticks out to me as kind of like an oddball. Most people not looking at him as, that valuable of a running back in fantasy football. That job in Tampa is his. I don't expect any fall off from Leonard Fournette for the rest of the season. That offense is just too good. He's earned that job, stole it away from Ronald Jones at that. And here's my thinking. You pick up Fournette, you can ride him for the rest of the season. Now, when we get to the offseason, that's where it gets a little bit tricky with all these guys. Both of them, Ronald Jones, a 2022 unrestricted free agent. I'm pretty sure Fournette's on a 1-year contract too. I do not think that under any scenario, Tampa Bay is going to bring both of them back. And here's my thinking what's going to happen. I personally think they'll find a way to bring back Leonard Fournette as long as Tom Brady comes back one more year. You're going to do whatever you can do to keep that team intact, keep Tom Brady happy, which kind of leaves Ronald Jones as the odd man out. And, looking ahead at next year's draft, not a ton of talent coming in at the running back position. It doesn't look like there's not going to be 3, 4, 5 running backs coming in like the last couple of years, taking over starting jobs. A lot of these starting jobs in the NFL are going to have to come from within the organization or in some of these unrestricted free agents. That's where Ronald Jones comes into play. Not the flashiest, not the best running back in the NFL. But let's go back to the beginning. The first half stretch of the season last year, Ronald Jones was a top 10 running back, man. Not only did Bruce Arians endorse him, Tom Brady, that whole team. I do think Ronald Jones ends up landing on a team next year. And at worst case, he'll be in a committee where he actually gets some touches. And then also add into the Keyshawn Vaughn part. It was a guy last year, you were drafting Ronald Jones 7th, 8th round, and Vaughn was going the very next round, sometimes before him. Kind of the forgotten man there. I like picking him up because the way I look at it next year on my roster, after the offseason's done, going to have Fournette in his backup and one of the best offenses in the league, and then Ronald Jones wherever he goes. I think you can get that whole package relatively cheap. I think it's a good move for contending teams and rebuilding teams. That's my take.
Yeah, I actually like a lot. I really agree with kind of the path of each of those guys that you're predicting. Leonard Fournette coming back, assuming Brady comes back, which I think he will for another year, and then Ronald Jones kind of being the odd man out, which could be the opportunity he needs to actually have a role. And then, Keyshawn Vaughn's a guy they drafted relatively high. He'd be the new number 2 back and, have a window to be the future. So I love it. And like you said, definitely helps you down the road this year because I do think Fournette, he gets sneaky good around playoff time, as we know. He finished last year on fire in the NFL playoffs and in the Super Bowl. And I think he's going to get back to that real quick. So I like it.
Yeah, I like it as well. I think it just makes a lot of sense. Like Al said, like you said, I mean, there's a path for all 3 guys, and like you said too, they're going to be cheap for whatever reason. Well, not for whatever reason, but they don't have a ton of value right now because they kind of take the backseat to Brady and all those receivers. But I mean, they're still starting running backs. Ronald Jones has the capability to become a starter somewhere else, and I like that take. I think they're all good players and you can get them for pretty good value right now.
Right. And I just want to add it one more time is I think you can get the whole trio for the price of one starting running back.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah. I would say so.
All right. Kick it over to you, Doc. What trades are you making in this final week, my man?
All right. So I was kind of back and forth between 2 guys. It's both guys who I feel like have kind of taken a backseat to someone else on their team. Both receivers, both young. I'll start with Brandon Aiuk, who I feel pretty strongly about. So I know Al mentioned at the top of the show, and we did shows last week where I was on the same line of thinking, where these are targets where I want a guy who not only can help me win now, but also is a huge piece for me going forward. I think Brandon Aiuk is that guy, and he's starting to come on finally after a really disappointing start to this season. I know he had a lot of hype coming into this year in the offseason. A lot of people talked about how good he was as a rookie, and if he could just stay healthy, how good he would be this year. Gets hurt with the hamstring before the season, is playing in those early games, but is clearly not being used the amount he should be. We've seen in the last few weeks his role starting to get back to normal. 7+ targets in 3 of his last 4 games, 2 touchdowns in 3 of those games as well. So, I mean, this is a guy who's just putting up numbers. He's returning to that kind of status. And again, this is a guy that people would have killed for in the offseason. Now his stock is plummeted because of how great Deebo Samuel has been. But I'm telling you, Jimmy G is starting to look for him a lot again. He's becoming a big part of that offense again. And with Deebo being as good as he was, Brandon Ayuk's almost forgotten. So not only is he cheap right now to get in fantasy, but also I feel like he's getting more opportunities to score big points because teams are starting to have to worry about Deebo killing the game with all the different ways he can hit you. And not to mention, too, Jimmy G has looked a lot better than I think anyone would have expected. So, I mean, all those things combined, not to mention the fact that the 49ers look like they might end up a playoff team. As soon as Brandon Aiuk starts balling out on prime time, people are just going to bump that stock right back through the ceiling. So now I think is the time. Get him now before he goes off the rest of the way, and then just reap the benefits, folks. It's that easy. I love Brandon Aiuk, and I think now's the time to get him. And I do have another guy before you guys chime in, and I'll just say real quick because I don't have as much to say about him, but it's someone I thought of as you guys were talking. Similarly, though, Chris Godwin. I don't think he'll be as cheap as Brandon Aiuk, but I do feel like there is kind of a feeling, at least in most leagues and people I've talked with about this kind of stuff, it seems like he's like the odd man out for some reason. Antonio Brown is like, yeah, short term, he's like the one people want when he's healthy. Mike Evans has been, I guess, better this season. But to me, Chris Godwin's been like the most consistent of the three. He gets a nice chunk of targets. They look at him in the red zone too. Like, I just feel like overall his role in the offense and his age, all those things combined is what makes me want to trade for him the rest of the way. And then whether he comes back or goes somewhere else after the season, I don't know, but I just love him as a talent and feel like people are way too low on him for absolutely no reason.
Yeah, I'll touch on both quick. I'm a huge Godwin guy, so don't really need to add much there. Reiterate everything you said. Also, big Aiuk guy, especially in the offseason and even before his rookie year. Now is really big on the Aiuk train. They drafted him in the first round. Debo was a second rounder a few years ago. So I kind of, last year before the year predicted Aiuk would be the one, Debo would be the two in that offense, which actually sort of held true last year. And then this year kind of, complete 180. Debo's just been absolutely on a tear and playing awesome.
Right.
But, you mentioned all the reasons Aiuk got off to a slow start. And now all of a sudden we're seeing that, first round pick of a year ago who showed why he can be a special player in this league. So I like that as well. Definitely a guy you should go get.
Yeah, I like it. And just sitting here and listening to you guys talk about both these guys, something coming to mind for me is both guys who were ranked a lot higher not that long ago.
Right.
And both guys that could turn it around and climb right back up those rankings. So I like it. I wrote a couple down. I'm just going to toss out. And I know we actually spoke about one of these guys on the show last week. I just wanted to bring up another point that we didn't make last week that I caught today. Let me pull it up one second. And that guy we were talking about was last week, Doc. You were talking about Jalen Hurts. Had another great weekend. I was actually, revisiting a trade that I turned down last week for me receiving Jalen Hurts. And I happened to catch something that I was not aware of. I'm not sure if you guys were. I'm sure some of you guys at home were. I'm just a little bit behind on that. Jalen Hurts' remaining schedule is amazing. He has 2 games left with the New York Giants, 1 game left with the New York Jets, and 2 with the Washington Redskins. That's his remaining schedule. I think this dude over the last 5 weeks is going to be a top 3 quarterback with that schedule. Also, big bump to Devontae Smith for these next 5 of these next 6 weeks. Only downfall is he hasn't had his bye week yet, though. So, I mean, that's going to hurt you. But other than that, he's got great matchups all the way. One other guy I'm going to toss out, and I think this is an interesting case because all the fantasy shows I've seen, last week, even some this week already, everybody else is recommending to sell this guy. Sell high. And I actually kind of agree that he is a sell high candidate, but I don't think that what he's being sold for meets its value for what he's been worth so far. And that's going to be James Conner, man. I mean, the guy's just been flat out balling. I know coming into this weekend was leading the NFL in touchdowns. Probably still is. I'm not sure if Jonathan Taylor made up any ground with his great weekend. Eckler too. Those great performances. Either way, he's top 1 or 2. And I guess the whole theory here is that this guy's just filling in for Chase Edmonds. There's no long-term job here for James Conner. I'm not sure what's the holdup with liking James Conner, but I mean, here's a guy that you can get, that's putting up elite numbers at the running back position on an elite offense. and you don't have to pay an elite price for him. And for me, looking ahead, Dynasty Owl, I know you're a big Chase Edmonds guy, or you were coming into the season.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that still holds true. But for me, dude, that's James Conner's job now. Chase Edmonds is going to be a compliment to that. I don't see him taking this guy off the field based on how he's performed. And one thing I was thinking about too, because I was thinking about making a trade for him. So I went to look to see his remaining schedule. And I don't even have it in front of me because I realized like halfway through it, I don't care what his remaining schedule is. On that Arizona offense with Kyler Murray, with DeAndre Hopkins, I don't care. There's going to be opportunities. Nobody is stopping that offense. He's a big cog in it. And I just want to point ahead. I'm looking ahead to next year. And I think a lot of people just writing off James Conner, 26 years old. There's no major help coming in the NFL draft this year. And if he continues to do this, I don't even think they'll really look elsewhere. They'll just make James Conner the starter, and we'll be doing this all over again next season. I think he's a great go-get target right now.
Yeah, I definitely like the take as well. And, you said I'm a big Chase Edmonds guy, which I am and still am. But what I do think, and I've kind of said this all along too, is I think they're a really good pairing. Chase Edmonds is clearly more of a receiving back than an every down back. James Conner is way more of a, between the tackles, first and second down running back. So I do think they make sense together, which I actually think the presence of each helps them not go out and try and draft a running back high or sign another guy. Because I think they've got a guy, to do each of the main roles. And yeah, he's producing big time, scoring a lot of touchdowns. And yeah, I think he helps you big time the rest of the year. And I think, there's a decent shot no other legitimate running back comes into the mix in Arizona next year.
Yeah, and I just want to add, because I agree. I think that they're a great mix. And maybe I'm mistaken on my perception coming into the season. I guess what I'm saying is coming into the season, I thought it was kind of like 60% Edmonds' job, 40%.
And it was. And now I do think
now
it
it's switched. Right.
Yeah.
60-40 the other way. Right. Okay.
Right.
I forgot his name. Terminator.
Yeah.
I think people forget how good James Conner was before he, the injuries started piling up in Pittsburgh. And we're kind of seeing a return to that. And I will say this, I like Edmonds between the tackles, but I think I don't know how to word this. I like Conner more as a receiver than I like Edmonds as a between the tackles runner. I feel like Conner is, as much as he is a between the tackles power kind of runner, goal line carries, they're giving him all that stuff. He still is a competent receiver. And we've seen a little more of that recently with Edmonds out too. And I totally agree. I think Conner's a guy that's just going to keep eating the rest of the year. And I think going forward, Edmonds lead into, but I still think he's got the potential to be a really good running back for a couple more years for sure.
Yeah. Real quick, piggybacking on something that Doc just said, he more or less said James Conner much better receiver than given credit for, kind of. And I actually think that's true all across the league with a lot of these bigger running backs. Truth is, if you throw these guys the ball, they're professionals. They're going to catch it most of the time. And, if they get left open, they might not run the best routes like a McCaffrey or an Eckler, but that means they're going to get left open because defenses aren't as concerned and they're going to do some damage. I'm talking about Derrick Henry, AJ Dillon, James Conner, even Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The list goes on. So these big running backs who are, great with the ball in their hands, they can catch a wide open pass too, and then do some more damage with ball in their hands. So.
All right, good stuff. And then anybody else you guys want to mention, or is that it?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Good stuff as always. Hey, you guys at home, if you could hit the like and subscribe button. Love for you to come be a part of the Masters family. Any last words, guys?
Thanks for listening.